poor girl finds lost fortune but does what no one imagined. The sun was beginning to set over the seaside village, tinting the sky with shades of orange and pink. 12-year-old Sophia sat at the small kitchen table, watching her grandfather, who was lounging in a chair nearby. He was coughing lightly, his hand curled over his chest, his face lined with age and hard work. The house they lived in was simple and modest, made of wood aged by salt and wind. There was always a smell of the sea that invaded the rooms, bringing with it memories of fishing days. Sophia knew that her grandfather was sick and that things were not going well. They were struggling financially, and their job as a fisherman was no longer enough to support them both. Medicines were expensive, and the old fisherman could barely get out of bed some days. Sophia felt a pang in her heart when she saw him in that state. "I have to do something," she thought. She could not continue to watch her grandfather suffer without trying to help in some way. She stood up from the table, determined. "I'm going out for a while, Grandpa," she said, trying to sound cheerful but feeling the weight of her worry. "I'm going to take a walk around the village." Her grandfather nodded, a weak smile on his face, not having the strength to question her. Sophia left the house with an idea in her head. She needed to find a solution to the problems they were facing. Maybe she could find something useful in the village, something she could sell or trade for food and medicine. As she walked through the village's dirt streets, Sophia glanced up at the abandoned lighthouse at the top of the hill. There was something fascinating about the place, something that had always piqued her curiosity. The lighthouse was an ancient structure, now in ruins, that stood alone against the darkening sky. It was said to be haunted, that lost sailors still roamed the area. Sophia's grandfather used to tell her stories about the lighthouse, stories of ancient times, of secrets kept and treasures hidden. Sophia walked forward carefully, feeling the cool sea breeze blow on her face. When she finally reached the top, she took a deep breath, looking up at the imposing lighthouse in front of her. Its windows were broken, and the stairs, worn down by time, led down to a dark, unfamiliar interior. She walked in slowly, the floor creaking beneath her feet. The lighthouse looked more frightening than ever, but Sophia's determination was stronger than her fear. "I have to find something," she repeated to herself. She climbed the stairs carefully, her footsteps echoing through the silent room. When she reached the top floor, she noticed a panel on the floor that seemed out of place, slightly raised at one end. Curious, Sophia knelt down and pulled the panel open. With a creak, the piece of wood gave way, revealing a secret compartment. Sophia's heart raced. Inside was a wooden box, covered in dust. With trembling hands, she pulled it out and, upon opening it, her eyes widened. Inside was a considerable amount of money, as well as documents and a letter. She picked up the letter and began to read. It was from a wealthy man in the city, someone known for his wealth and his relentless pursuit of justice. The man described how he had lost everything due to a mistake by a corrupt local official, and how the money and documents were his last hope of regaining his honor and helping his family. However, he died before he could achieve his goal. Sophia felt a chill run down her spine. What she had found was indeed a treasure, but not the kind she had expected. The money could change her and her grandfather's lives forever. It could pay for the medical care he needed, buy them a better home, and ensure they would never go hungry again. But what should she do? Should she take the money and pretend she had never found it? Or should she return it and risk losing everything? As she stared at the contents of the box, Sophie's moral dilemma grew. Her mind was filled with conflicting thoughts. On the one hand, the money was a blessing, a chance for a better life. On the other, she remembered her grandfather's words about the importance of honesty, about doing what's right even when no one is looking. What would Grandpa do? She wondered. The temptation was almost unbearable. But every time she thought about taking the money, the image of her grandfather, sick and frail, popped into her mind, reminding her of all the teachings about integrity. Sophie knew that if she took the wrong path, she would never be able to look at her grandfather the same way again. She closed the box, determined to take it home and think it over. With the box clutched tightly in her arms, Sophia walked down the stairs of the lighthouse, her heart heavy with the decision she knew she had to make. When she finally reached the base of the lighthouse, the sun had already disappeared below the horizon, leaving the village in shadow. She walked slowly back home, her mind racing with the difficult choice that lay ahead. When she got home, Sophia found her grandfather still in his chair, his gaze lost somewhere beyond the walls of the small house. She approached slowly, holding the box behind her. "Grandpa," she began, but her voice faltered. How could she tell him about what she had found? Would he understand? "I found something at the lighthouse," she finally said, her words coming out in a whisper. Grandpa looked at her, his eyes tired but kind. "What is it, my child?" he asked, his voice hoarse. Sophia hesitated. She wanted to tell him everything, but seeing how fragile her grandfather was, she realized that perhaps he was in no condition to give her advice. "Nothing, Grandpa. Just a bunch of old stuff." He smiled slightly, and Sophia felt a pang of guilt. That night, while her grandfather slept, Sophia lay awake, staring at the box next to her bed. She knew she had to make a decision, and quickly. Time was passing, and the weight of responsibility seemed to crush her. Finally, at dawn, she made her decision. She would return what she had found to the most powerful man in town, Mr. Rodrigo. Maybe he knew what to do with the money and documents. She knew that this decision would change everything, but she was ready to face the consequences, no matter what. With a heavy heart and a mind full of uncertainty, Sophia walked slowly through the streets of the village. The wooden box, now wrapped in an old cloth, was tightly held in her arms. Each step she took seemed harder than the last. The road leading to Mr. Rodrigo's house was steep, and Sophia felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. She knew that her decision to return the box was the right thing to do, but the fear of the unknown consumed her. As she climbed the hill, Sophia remembered the stories she had heard about Mr. Rodrigo. He was known for his wealth and his reputation for being fair but also harsh. Some people in the village feared him, others respected him. Sophia didn't know what to expect. What if he didn't believe her? What if he thought she had taken something for herself? These doubts swirled through her mind like a whirlwind. As she approached the imposing house, Sophia began to doubt her decision. "Am I making the right choice?" she thought. "What if he accuses me of stealing?" But then she remembered her grandfather's words about the importance of honesty, even when the road was difficult. Taking a deep breath, Sophia decided to move forward. Finally, Sophia arrived at the door of Mr. Rodrigo's large colonial house. It was an impressive building, with white walls and dark wooden windows. There was a well-kept garden in front, with colorful flowers and leafy trees that cast shadows on the path. Sophia hesitated for a moment, feeling fear and anxiety rise inside her. She raised her hand and knocked on the heavy wooden door. The sound echoed through the entryway, and for a moment, all she could hear was the sound of her own heart pounding in her chest. After a few seconds that felt like an eternity, the door opened, revealing a stern-faced employee. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice rough. I need to speak to Mr. Rodrigo," Sophia replied, her voice shaking slightly. "It's very important." The servant looked her up and down, his eyes narrowing in suspicion. "Wait here," he said finally, closing the door with a bang. Sophia stood there nervously, her thoughts racing in every direction. What if Mr. Rodrigo refused to see her? What if he was in a bad mood? After a few moments, the door opened again, and the servant waved her in. "Come," he said curtly. "Mr. Rodrigo will see you now." Sophia entered the house, feeling small and insignificant in the large hall. The marble floor gleamed, and the walls were adorned with portraits of ancestors and elaborate tapestries. She followed the servant down a long hallway to a spacious room, where Mr. Rodrigo sat behind a large, dark wooden desk. Mr. Rodrigo was a sturdy man with neatly combed gray hair and a meticulously trimmed mustache. His brown eyes were piercing, watching Sophia with a cold, calculating expression. He didn't say a word as she slowly approached the table, the box still clutched tightly in her arms. "So," he said finally, his voice low and authoritative, What do you want? Sophia swallowed, trying to find the right words. I found this at the abandoned lighthouse, she began, placing the box on the table. I think it belonged to a man who was your friend. I wanted to return it. Mr. Rodrigo stared at the box for a long moment, then at Sophia. And you expect me to believe that a little girl like you found this and just decided to return it? His voice was sharp, and Sophia felt tears form in her eyes. I didn't take anything, sir. I swear. I just thought it was the right thing to do. Mr. Rodrigo opened the box slowly, examining the contents carefully. His eyes narrowed as he saw the letter and the money. Did you read the letter? He asked, without looking up. Sophia nodded shyly. Yes, sir. I did. Sophia, with tears streaming down her face, explained everything to Mr. Rodrigo. She told him how she had found the box, how she had read the letter and understood the importance of its contents. I know the money could help me and my grandfather, she said, her voice breaking. But Grandpa always taught me to be honest, to do what is right, even when it is difficult. Mr. Rodrigo listened in silence, his expression unchanged. When she finished, there was a long silence in the room, broken only by the soft sound of Sophia's breathing and the faint ticking of an antique clock. Finally, Mr. Rodrigo spoke. You are a girl, Brave, he said slowly. But how can I be sure you didn't take anything for yourself? Sophia shook her head desperately. I didn't take anything. I gave everything back because I knew it was the right thing to do. Please believe me. Mr. Rodrigo was silent for a few more moments, seeming to ponder his words. Finally, he closed the box and stood up, walking to the window. He looked out at the distant horizon, where the sun was beginning to set, tinting the sky orange. You did what many wouldn't do, especially at your age, he said softly, not turning to face her. It shows character and courage, two things that are rare in this world. He turned to face Sophia, his expression softening a little. I believe in you, little girl. Sophia let out a sigh of relief, tears still streaming down her face. Thank you, sir, she said, her voice shaking. I just wanted to do what was right. Mr. Rodrigo walked back to the table and placed the box in her hands. You deserve a reward for your honesty, he said, and I promise that your grandfather will receive the medical care he needs. And as for you, I will make sure that you have the chance to study and have a bright future. Sophia couldn't help the smile that formed on her face. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Mr. Rodrigo nodded, a small smile curving his lips. Now go home, little girl. Your grandfather must be worried about you. Sophia nodded and stood up, feeling lighter than she had in days. As she walked out of Mr. Rodrigo, she knew her life was about to change forever. The journey back to the village felt different to Sophia. Although the sounds of seagulls and the smell of salty sea air were still present, something had changed inside her. Mr. Rodrigo's promise to help her grandfather and provide Sophia with a quality education brought a mix of hope and anxiety to her heart. When she arrived home, Sophia saw a small carriage parked in front of her modest home. Her heart beat faster when he noticed two doctors getting out of the vehicle, each carrying a leather case. She ran towards the house, fear and hope fighting within her. Grandpa? She called as she entered. In the small room, she found her grandfather lying in bed, with a doctor at his side examining him attentively, while the other prepared some medicine. Sophia's grandfather seemed calmer, his eyes meeting hers with a gleam of relief. He's in good hands now, one of the doctors said with a kind smile. Mr. Rodrigo sent us. We'll do our best to make sure he's okay. Sophia felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. For the first time in a long time, she felt like things could actually get better. In the following days, news of Mr. Rodrigo's help for Sophia and her grandfather spread quickly throughout the village. While some villagers were happy for her, others reacted with suspicion. How could such a young girl have won the favor of such a powerful man? Some whispered. Could there be something more behind this? Sophia felt the weight of these stares and murmurs as she walked through the streets to buy bread from the local bakery. People who had once known her well now seemed hesitant, unsure of how to approach her. Don't pay attention to what they say, advised Dona Marta, the village baker, as she handed Sophia the bread. You did what you thought was right. Let time show the truth. Sophia smiled gratefully and continued on her way. She knew she couldn't control what others thought, but she was determined to move forward and seize the opportunities she was given. A few days later, Mr. Rodrigo sent a messenger to inform Sophia and her grandfather about the school she would be enrolled in. One of the best in town, the messenger explained. Mr. Rodrigo has made all the necessary arrangements. You will start next week. Sophia felt butterflies in her stomach. The idea of going to a new school, especially one so prestigious, made her nervous. What if I don't fit in? What if the other kids don't like me? She wondered. But at the same time, she knew that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, an opportunity that could change her life and her grandfather's forever. In the days leading up to her departure, Sophia and her grandfather made the necessary preparations. Grandfather, though still weak, seemed more cheerful. I'm so proud of you, Sophia, he said one day as he helped her pack her small suitcase. You have a good heart, and I know you will do great things. On the day of her departure, the entire village seemed to have gathered to say goodbye to Sophia. Even those who were skeptical about their luck came to wish them luck. Don't forget us when you're in the big city, joked one of the local fishermen. Come back and visit us soon. Sophia smiled, but her eyes were filled with tears. She turned to her grandfather, who hugged her tightly. It will be all right, my girl, he whispered. Go and learn everything you can, and never forget who you are. With one last wave to the village that had always been her home, Sophia climbed into the carriage that would take her to her new school. She looked back, watching the village slowly move away, until it disappeared completely from view. When the carriage finally stopped in front of the school's grand gates, Sophie felt a mixture of awe and fear. The school was huge, with beautiful gardens and imposing stone buildings. Well-dressed students milled about, and she couldn't help but feel out of place. Will I be able to fit in here? She thought. She was greeted by the school principal, a tall woman with a warm smile. Welcome, Sophia, she said. We are very happy to have you with us. I am sure you will do very well here. The headmistress then escorted her to her new room, a small, cozy room with a stunning view of the gardens. As she unpacked her bag, Sophia looked out the window, watching the other students interacting. She knew the next few days wouldn't be easy, but she was determined to make the most of her opportunity. Everything will be okay, she repeated to herself. I just need to be myself and do my best. Sophia's first few days at her new school were challenging. The environment was completely different from anything she had known in her village. The classrooms were large and bright, with blackboards stretching from one end to the other. The students, dressed in neat uniforms, moved confidently through the hallways as Sophia tried to get used to the routine and fast pace of the classes. Sophia felt like all eyes were on her. During meals in the cafeteria, she would notice whispers and curious glances. Who's that new girl? She heard someone ask. Did you hear how she got here? They say Mr. Rodrigo brought her. She felt like a fish out of water. The subjects were much more advanced than what she was used to, and the distinct accents of her teachers and classmates made it difficult to follow the lessons. Sophia struggled to understand concepts in math and science, subjects that were rarely covered at her old school. The feeling of displacement was overwhelming, and her homesickness grew stronger with each passing day. One of the teachers, however, seemed to notice Sophia's struggle. Clara, the literature teacher, noticed the girl's dedication and approached her after class. Sophia, you are a very intelligent girl. I know you are struggling, but don't give up. If you need help, I will be here, she said with a gentle smile. The teacher's words were a relief to Sophia, who felt a small ray of hope warm her heart. During a group activity in science class, Sophia was assigned to work with Clara, a girl who seemed just as out of place as she was. Clara was shy and seemed to have a hard time fitting in. As they worked on the project together, Sophia realized that Clara also felt lonely and out of place. I don't know many people here either, Clara confessed, as she tried to build a model of the solar system with Sophia. My family moved here recently, and I miss my old friends. Sophia smiled, feeling an immediate connection. "I understand," she said. "It's all new to me too, but maybe we can be friends and help each other." Over time, the two began to grow closer. They spent their breaks together, exploring the school and finding quiet places where they could talk. Clara helped Sophia with her homework, explaining what she knew about the subjects, while Sophia offered advice on how to adapt to the new environment. The unexpected friendship made Sophia's school days a little easier, and she began to feel less alone. Even with the support of Clara and her literature teacher, Sophia knew she needed to work harder to keep up with the academic pace of her new school. The demands were high, and she didn't want to disappoint Mr. Rodrigo, her grandfather, or herself. Determined to improve, Sophia began spending more time in the library, studying on her own after school. Little by little, she began to better understand concepts that had previously confused her. She spent hours reading math and science books, and soon became a regular at the library. The librarian, a friendly, elderly man, began to help her, recommending books that might help her understand and offering words of encouragement. "You have a rare determination," he remarked one day, watching Sophia over the top of his glasses as she leafed through a thick volume of history. "Keep it up, and you'll go far." Despite all the late nights of studying and constant effort, Sophia began to see progress. Her grades gradually improved, and she felt a sense of pride she had never experienced before. She began to believe that, with hard work, she could overcome any obstacle. The opportunity to prove her progress came during an important presentation in her history class. The class had been divided into groups, and each group had to present a paper on different ancient civilizations. Sophia and Clara chose to talk about ancient Egypt, a topic that had intrigued Sophia since she was a child. Sophia and Clara worked hard on the project. They spent entire afternoons in the library, gathering information and preparing an engaging presentation. When the day of the presentation finally arrived, Sophia was nervous but ready. She knew this was her chance to show everyone that despite her humble origins, she had a lot to offer. During her presentation, Sophia spoke passionately and clearly about ancient Egypt, explaining the pyramids, the pharaohs, and the mysteries of the Nile. Her presentation was engaging and informative, filled with fascinating details that she and Clara had discovered during their research. When she finished, the class gave a standing ovation, and even the usually stern professor gave a satisfied smile. "Excellent work, Sophia," he said. "Your dedication and passion for learning are evident." From that moment on, Sophia began to gain respect and recognition from her peers and teachers, not only for her intelligence, but also for her determination and hard work. She was no longer seen as just the girl from the village. She was Sophia, a promising student with a bright future ahead of her. As her success grew, Sophia began to reflect on her future. She knew that her education at the new school was a unique opportunity, something few people from her background would ever experience. But at the same time, her heart was still in the village, with her grandfather and the people she had known since she was a little girl. On a sunny afternoon, sitting on a bench in the school garden next to Clara, Sophia shared her feelings. "Sometimes I wonder what I'm doing here," she said, looking at the flowers gently swaying in the wind. "I feel like I need to take this chance, but I also miss home. I miss my grandfather." Clara smiled understandingly. "It's normal to feel that way, but think of all you can do with this education. You could go back home one day and help your village even more, or even make a difference elsewhere. The decision is yours." Clara's words resonated deeply with Sophia. She realized that the education she was receiving was more than just an opportunity for herself. It was a chance to change lives, both in her village and beyond. She decided that she would dedicate her studies to finding ways to help her community and others in need. After months of dedication and effort at school, Sophia began to stand out not only as one of the best students, but also as a natural leader. Her story of honesty and courage had spread, not only at school, but also throughout the city. This reached the ears of Mr. Rodrigo, who was closely watching Sophia's progress. Impressed by his evolution and determination, he decided to invest even more in his future. One sunny afternoon, Sophia was called to the school principal's office. When she entered, she found Mr. Rodrigo sitting in a leather chair next to the principal. He greeted her with a rare smile that gave her a sense of reassurance. "Sophia, I've been following your progress," he said. "You've done an extraordinary job, and it doesn't go unnoticed." Sophia thanked him, feeling her heart race. "Thank you, Mr. Rodrigo. I'm trying to do my best." "I know you are," he replied, leaning forward. "And that's why I've decided to invest even more in your potential. I want to support your projects and ideas for improving your village. I believe you have the ability to make big changes, not just for yourself, but for your entire community." The proposal took Sophia by surprise. She had always dreamed of being able to help her village, but she had never imagined that she would have an opportunity like this. I don't know what to say, sir," she stammered, overcome with emotion. "This is more than I could have imagined." "So, start imagining," Mr. Rodrigo said with a smile. "Think about what you would like to do, and we will make it happen." Over the next few weeks, Sophia began working on a detailed plan to improve living conditions in the village. She spent hours in the school library researching community development, education, and public health. Each idea she came up with was discussed with Clara and a few teachers who had become Sophia's mentors. She knew the village needed a better school, where children could receive a quality education without having to leave home, as she had to do. He also thought of ways to improve health conditions, bringing doctors and resources to care for the elderly and the sick like his grandfather. With Mr. Rodrigo's support, Sophia developed a comprehensive project that included building a new school, creating a community health center, and providing training programs for the village's youth so they could learn trades and improve their chances of employment. When she presented the project to Mr. Rodrigo, he was impressed by Sophia's level of detail and commitment to her community. "You really thought of everything," he said. "I'm proud of you, Sophia. Let's do this together." A few months later, Sophia returned to the village accompanied by Mr. Rodrigo and a team of professionals he had hired to help implement the project. Upon her arrival, Sophia was greeted enthusiastically by the villagers, who hugged her and smiled at her, visibly excited about what was to come. Sophia's grandfather, who was now much healthier thanks to the medical care provided earlier, was standing at the door of the house, waiting for her. "My angel!" he exclaimed when he saw her, pulling her into a tight hug. "I knew you would do great things." Sophia smiled, her eyes brimming with tears. "It's good to be home, Grandpa. And now we can start making the changes the village needs." The team of professionals and volunteers got to work immediately. Building the new school was the first task, followed by the creation of the health center. Everyone in the village got involved, helping in any way they could. Sophia worked side by side with the villagers, carrying bricks, painting walls, and organizing meetings to discuss next steps. As the weeks turned into months, the village began to see the changes taking shape. The new, larger, better-equipped school was nearly complete, and the children of the village could hardly wait to start school. Parents beamed as they watched their children have the opportunity to learn in a safe environment. The health center also began operating, providing regular and preventative medical care for all residents. Sophia was happy to see the waiting lists for medical care decreasing and people beginning to understand the importance of prevention and health care. The workshops began to attract young people and adults, teaching useful skills such as carpentry, sewing, and even business principles. Sophia noticed that people were more excited, more engaged in improving their lives. She knew this was just the beginning, but she could already see the positive impact the changes were having. With the completion of the new school and health center, the village decided to organize a party to celebrate the improvements and the promising future they now saw, thanks to Sophia's efforts and Mr. Rodrigo's support. The central square was decorated with flowers and colorful flags, and the residents brought local foods and musical instruments. The party was a bonding event. People who had not seen each other for months chatted animatedly, and children ran around laughing and playing. The elders told stories about how the village had changed, about the time before Sophia, and how the young girl, with her honest heart and indomitable spirit, had brought new hope to everyone. During the celebration, Mr. Rodrigo gave a moving speech. "Today, we celebrate not just new buildings or new programs," he said, his voice firm and clear. We celebrate the courage of a girl who showed us the true value of honesty and hard work. We celebrate Sophia, who, at just 12 years old, changed all of our lives. The applause was deafening. Sophia felt her face heat up with embarrassment and happiness as the people around her applauded her and shouted her name. She looked at her grandfather, who was standing next to her, a proud smile on his face. After Mr. Rodrigo's speech, he announced something no one expected. As a sign of our appreciation and respect for Sophia's hard work and integrity, I want to announce that we will continue to support this village, not just financially, but with resources and opportunities for all who want to grow and learn. Sophia's eyes filled with tears. The recognition of her work and the promise of continued support were more than she had ever expected. As people surrounded her, expressing their gratitude, Sophia felt a sense of accomplishment and deep purpose. She had done the right thing, and that had made all the difference. After the party, Sophia sat down with her grandfather and Mr. Rodrigo to discuss the future. "Sophia, there is so much more you can do," Mr. Rodrigo said. "You have a vision and a heart that can change lives. I would like to continue supporting your education if you would like." Sophia looked to her grandfather for guidance. He smiled at her. "That is a decision only you can make, my daughter. But know that whatever you choose, I am here to support you." Sophia thought about everything that had happened, about the impact she had already made, and how much more she could do if she continued to learn. "I would like to continue my education," she finally said. "But I want to do it so I can help even more people, not just here, but everywhere who needs it." Mr. Rodrigo smiled, pleased. "Then that's what we'll do," he said. "You have my full support, Sophia. Keep growing, keep learning, and keep bringing your honesty and kind heart wherever you go." Before leaving for her next phase of education, Sophia said goodbye to everyone in the village. The villagers organized a small farewell ceremony where everyone had the chance to express their gratitude and good wishes for Sophia's future. It was an emotional moment, with lots of hugs, tears, and laughter. When it was time to leave, Sophia knelt beside her grandfather. "I promise to come back, Grandpa," she said, holding his hands tightly. "And I promise that I will never forget everything you have taught me. I will use it to help as many people as I can." Sophia's grandfather smiled, tears in his eyes. "I know you will, my girl. You have a good heart, and that's what really matters." Sophia climbed into the carriage that would take her back to town. As the carriage began to move, she looked back, seeing her grandfather and the villagers waving to her. She felt a mix of emotions. Sadness at leaving behind those she loved, but also a palpable excitement for the future that awaited her. As the village disappeared from view, Sophia allowed herself to dream of what lay ahead. She knew that the road ahead would be full of challenges, but also opportunities. She had the chance to learn even more, to become even more capable of helping not only her village, but other communities as well. As the carriage reached the top of a hill, Sophie looked out over the horizon and saw the sun rising. It was a new day, full of promise and possibilities. With a smile on her face and a heart full of hope, she knew she was ready for whatever the future held in store for her. To watch the next story, subscribe to the channel and see you next time.